And we're live with our 229th episode of Absolute AppSec. I'm Ken Johnson at CK Tricky on Twitter, joined by my co-host Seth Law at Seth Law on X and probably Mastodon too, I think. Seth, say
Yeah.
hi.
Hey everyone. Welcome back to another episode. I'm still convinced that, Musk bought Twitter, renamed it to X just to mess with Ken's introduction, just to throw us off every single week, right? Welcome back to another year of Absolute AppSec. Ken and I are excited. We have a lot of plans this year. We've got a lot of ideas about how to grow the community, to make things better, to involve more people, and to just in general give back, right? I think those of you that haven't listened to the initial versions of the podcast or the initial episodes, Ken and I started this just as a way for us to catch up, to talk about security stuff, right? Like what we talk about on almost a daily basis, or at the time was on a daily basis after going through some security drama. And it's grown from there, right? Like super excited to just see the community. I'm always amazed at the number of people that we have in Slack on a daily basis that are generating conversations that Ken and I aren't even involved in, or don't even get to.
On a daily
It's a great
basis,
thing to
that
actually
are
see. Oh wow.
sorry.
Ken's screwing with YouTube in the back end. But as you can tell, right? Like this is very much a hobbyist podcast. We do this because it's interesting to us. We talk to interesting people, and it moves things. I feel like it moves the needle forward. So appreciate everyone listening. I guess that's where we're starting out the year, Ken. I know we didn't necessarily plan this, but just super appreciative that it's still a thing, right? Like I don't know if we ever thought it would go this far.
No. Yeah. I was just trying to find out like how long ago we started. Our first episode aired on January 9th, 2018. So in a week exactly, we'll be at 6 years on air.
Mm-hmm.
So that's anyways, I thought that's cool. Yeah, 6 years
Yeah,
of
it is.
talking about this stuff.
The thing that I struggle with personally, right? Like, maybe it's my gray hair coming out, right? Like, is remembering who's actually been on the podcast at this point, right?
Oh
Like,
man, yeah.
we meet people and I'm like, oh, that's right. Yeah, we had you on a couple of years ago, right? Like, especially in the face to face, right? Like the whole COVID era, pandemic,
Oh
we
yeah.
talked to so many people, and we've talked to so many people up to this point, that it's an interesting dynamic, I guess, to actually like spin through all of that. Yeah, but outside of that, 229 is pretty awesome. The numbers keep going up. We have more and more people that are participating, and I know like people have dropped in and drop out as well, right? The community kind of grows organically. We don't do a lot of promotion or anything like that. I've teased it out a few times that we do want to get some sort of a of backing figured out, right? Like whether that is sponsorship, whether that is the listeners can buy some swag. We've got ideas around that, how we can actually make that happen. I mean, if any of our listeners have built that out in the past, we'd be, appreciative, or we'd be open to suggestions, right? I know we could, take specific sponsorship dollars. The sponsorships up to this point have been, dry run, as Ken's, showing his t-shirt right there, and Red Point, basically, our two companies that, just because we put time into it, right? That's been the only real, like, quote unquote sponsorship that we have. But if you're interested in going further than that, and, want us to, yeah, promote your name, promote your business, let us know. Yeah, I don't know, Ken. What else? What else do you want to
Usually catch
bring up?
up before we
Yeah,
jump online, but we didn't do that this time. We
yeah,
decided we do our catch up with on life real time, since neither of us have talked to each other a couple weeks, holidays and whatnot. So I figure, yeah, let's start with you. How were your holidays? What'd you do?
what did we do? I don't know. I'm ready for the kids to go back to school, I guess. I don't know at this point. I mean, it was mostly a lot of family stuff. Like we've been doing, you know, yeah, I mean, there hasn't been a ton of snow. Like typically I ski, right? Like, where I'm out in Utah, that's but this year the snow has not been great. And so it's been hard to justify taking the day, spending the money, like taking 5 people up and going when it's just like, it's okay, right? Like, so we haven't done that as much. It's been more of kind of, my daughter's back from college. She's got a friend that's visiting. It's been a lot of late nights and just almost just kind of family time. I don't know, right? Like it's been kind of nice to disconnect a little bit, not pay as much attention to security stuff. It's always hard to fully disconnect, at least in my in my own brain, right? But that's really been it. I mean, there hasn't been anything super like of note, which is nice. I've had dramatic breaks in the past, but this one's been pretty low key. What about you?
Well, follow up for you actually. What's it feel like to be out of Q4? What's that? The
Oh,
fog has lifted,
the
right?
fog
Or
has
is it
lifted.
done? Is
Yes.
it, or are you dealing with like residual reports or stuff, or is it like done?
Uh, there's a couple residual reports, but it's nothing like it was. Like we kind of finished up the that week before the holiday break, right? Um, at least all of the big projects dropped off. We delivered most of those. And so like at this point, I'm like, oh crap, right? Like that's right. I've been feeling more like a normal person. It was nice, like I was saying, right, to be able to disconnect and not have to worry about, hey, there's like these 4 reports or this that has to get done, these checklists that have to be, stepped through. I'm ready to get back at it. Basically, is what's happened, right? Like it's amazing what a couple week break will do, especially like integrating, some of the stuff that you and I have talked about, like integrating AI into the process. Right, like we've done preliminary work there, but it hasn't been as extensive as I would like it to be. Mainly because I was in the midst of, uh, you know, yeah, running ragged, basically. So,
Oh
I'm
yeah,
excited to get back to it.
you
But
really were.
yeah, yeah,
I mean, you're. I mean, like you're just like constant. I mean, yeah, you're always online, always working. It was a
yeah,
lot. It was a lot.
yep, yeah,
And yeah, I'm happy for you that it's over. I know a couple other friends, mutual friends of ours, kind of they're feeling the same thing. They're consultancies. They're like, "Whew, glad that's done," but obviously there's always that other thing where like, yeah, cool, Q1's a little slow, and then Q2 you're like, oh, all right, well,
well,
time to
back
turn
to
the.
it. Yeah,
It's always something. It's a hard road, but a rewarding one at times for
yeah,
sure.
it is. I mean, when you're running a small business, right? Like anytime that people are paying you, it's a good thing. And you kind of have to deal with the peaks and the valleys as it happens and plan it out, which is fine, right? Like it's all part of what you sign up for when you're a part of that community or about part of the consulting world. Even if you're just working for a consultancy, right? Like that's pretty typical. I mean, I remember even back in our days when we were at Fishnet, right? Where you and I were not in charge, right, whatsoever. And
No, very
but
much not.
you would feel that pressure, right? Like that the salespeople don't have things for you to do. What am I supposed to do now in like, February when there's not a lot going on? Or they're asking you to work, 80 hours a week in December because, the salespeople promise people stuff or promised client stuff. And,
I can promise you, I never had an issue with too much downtime. And the one time I
yes.
did, it wasn't an issue. It was this was back before mobile security was like a popular thing. It was right as it was, we were like early days. So put together some, I don't know if you remember this, it's like a 40 or 50 page Android security model breakdown, like what we should be looking for in apps, stuff like that. A long time
Mhm.
ago. But that's like, that was the downtime. There wasn't like, yeah, I think I was pretty consistently like 130, 140 percent billable.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
so there were, yeah, I mean, but you were a hot commodity too, because you came in with you're a principal and you had way more skills than I had. So they kind of used you for everything more than just I was an assessment. Uh,
Yeah.
robot. You were, trainer, sales, marketing, consulted on some of that stuff, and statements of work and, code review, everything under the sun, essentially pen tests, lots of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Life hasn't changed that much, Ken, right? Like, but
Yeah,
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 it's,
not, yeah, yeah. Happy New Year's as well to you, Charles.
yeah.
Yeah. Anyways,
Yeah.
like,
So what did you do over the break? You're talking about me. I'm grabbing my coffee here too.
well, let's see. I mean, honestly, like, no one asked this of me, but it's how it goes when you own your own business, right? Like for me, so like our product right now does a few things I want it to do, but the main core engine of it needs to be code analysis, right? So like, we've talked about some of the stuff it checks for, like sensitive function checks and sensitive file checks, and those checks run independent. And there's a reason for that, because I'm trying to tune each one of those before aggregating. Hey, you're touching a sensitive file, potentially sensitive function. We've got, maybe like an AppSec vulnerability sprinkled in there, and then hey, maybe somebody who's never committed to the repo. All these different checks that need to be tuned for accuracy. But the main thing is the code analysis. So knowing that needed to be done, and knowing that was like the only time I could go heads down, that's pretty much all I did. Is I don't want to use OpenAI, and I don't, because I'm sure you've seen a lot of the news with it's political and all that stuff, but people are worried about using OpenAI for a variety of reasons, whether it's rumors of business cases being use cases being taken, cribbed, or just having your code or your information sent out to some vast data bank that's not yours. Can't do that, right? So I spent the majority of my time getting my own LLM working for code analysis, and made it work. But man, it took up all my time. And tell you what, I've learned a lot about the AI space. It's pretty interesting. I mean, I say that. What I mean is, it's not that the technology is interesting. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying like the ecosystem is a strange one, man. It's a fast moving. Everybody's kind of racing to try and get stuff out. And it is a very, like, just one example would be, so I've talked before about LangChain, and I was like, well, if you need to like get something up fast, that's a good way to go. And it's true. It is, like, if you need to get like a basic example going, it's pretty great. But if you look on Reddit, you'll see a lot of the same complaints that I have, which are the documentation is really just like surface level. There's too many options and too many examples when you go through it to really make sense of what's happening. Also, it's an abstraction layer on top of LLMs, right? So the idea is like, because when you interact with, like, say, an LLM, you want to send maybe a system prompt to tell it how to behave, and maybe a different prompt, a user prompt for like the whatever question you're going to ask and how you want that answered, or whatever it might be. LangChain will format like the right like the sys and inst like tags correctly, and just handle all that stuff for you, so you don't have to say like, oh, let me wrap this prompt with these tags and this part of the prompt with these other tags, and if I need to have a follow-on thing, like a few shot prompt kind of thing, or even a chat history, whatever, like, yeah, you don't have to do that. It does it for you, which is pretty awesome. Great. But the problem is that because it's abstracting all that stuff, it's actually really hard to understand what's going on. You have to dig really into the code, and then to get like help on the internet, it's like not super easy. It's also because it's super new.
Yeah.
And then like, one thing that wasn't very obvious and still isn't. So if you're using LangChain or want to use it, actually you should listen to this part. So a lot of their documentation shows, setting up chains using what I now know is the old way of doing it in LangChain, which has like mixed results because it's not really the supported way of doing it anymore. And so their documents are a bit fractured. So it does discuss the new way of doing it, but it's not obvious that you need to use LCEL. It's like a LangChain expression language, I think is what that stands for.
Okay.
And this is just, by the way, one tiny part of the ecosystem I'm talking about with LangChain. But anyways, you to chain things together now, you use this LCEL pipeline. It's actually pretty neat, but when you get into it, you get to a point, I got to a point where you get frustrated and you're just sort of like, I want to go to the lowest level and just deal directly with all this stuff. I don't even want to use an abstraction layer. And that's one thing right there. You've got all the other, I think there's like a haystack and there's another major one I'm forgetting that are like the same kind of thing with LangChain. But then again, going back to those Reddit threads, if you go on there, you'll see everybody sort of just saying like, well, I didn't like either of those three options, so I built my own thing, and I built my own thing, and I built my own. So now on GitHub, there's like a ton of people that are building their own sort of abstraction layers to inconvenience things for AI. So that's just one part. I could go off forever on a tangent. I don't want to spend the whole time on that, but that was kind of my break, was like just working, but only because like I really love it and don't want to use OpenAI. Pretty much a stick in the mud on that one.
No,
I want to have control too, because the thing is too. Sorry, the last thing I'll say is just you can't train it, right? Like everybody says, anytime you look at people talking about training, like the OpenAI LLM, all they're talking about is using RAG in a database to score the results, and then like basically produce the right documents using RAG to give to the LLM. So it's not really training it per se in like the training sense. It's more of still using RAG to like say this was a better answer than this one. You know what I mean? So anyways, you want finer control, finer grained guarantees, privacy protections, all that stuff. You got to host your own.
Yep. Well, and I mean, that's going to be the interesting, where do I want to go with this? That's been the discussion point that we've had multiple times, right? Like the idea of privacy under the hood, like making sure that whatever it is that you're giving. And this is where I've struggled, with the code perspective, and what we've done up to this point is, we haven't built out our own models yet, right? Like we don't have control of the complete ecosystem. And so I am not comfortable giving anything but open source code to OpenAI to analyze. So, it's super cool if it's an open source project and we're starting to ask it questions, and that works, right? But the second that it's client code, it's stuff that I am, obligated to protect, financially and via like legal contracts, like I can't trust it, right? Like I don't have assurances that it's not going to end up biting me at some level, especially when it's code that I don't own, right? And that, so, from a business perspective, that's kind of where I've been going is, man, OpenAI, like there's definitely like advantages here, but until I can set up my own environment like you're doing, right? Like, and I have complete control of those knobs and of what's actually going where, even if it's being abstracted out, right? Like if I know that, then there's some level of, all right, there's protections built into it that I'm not releasing, code, especially not my own code, to a service that I don't know what it's doing with it. Right. We kind of have the same, discussions. Anytime we use a third party, anytime you use a SaaS solution, that's what they start asking is, what are the dependencies of your SaaS solution? Where are you sending this to? You'll see this in a lot of risk questionnaires as well. And if I can't answer that with a proper secure answer, then I'm legally bound. I'm on the hook if it ever goes bad, basically.
Yep.
So I've
had that conversation with people.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I've had that conversation where people are like, yeah, I'm not going to have my stuff sent to OpenAI. I'm like, yeah, I don't, agreed. Don't. And that's your stuff. I get it. I wouldn't even, but it's tougher to do it. That's, again, that's another thing. It's like all the examples out there, especially for these abstraction frameworks, they're all geared towards OpenAI first and foremost. They support everything else, of course, but when when you look at their, like a good example would be, fine, I'll be transparent. I mess with SageMaker a lot, right? Well, there's a problem with that though, because you got to do embeddings, right? So if you want to like use RAG, you got to be able to store data in an embedded format that matches up with what it's expecting. Luckily, I was able to get away with not using SageMaker embeddings and going a different route. But man, just that thing alone with an abstraction sort of framework becomes a fucking nightmare to get working right. To get the inputs and the outputs streamed in the right format, and making sure that the content that's coming through makes sense, because you're going to be using it as a potential answer for a question.
Yep.
It's very tough. It's very tough. So that none of the examples really help you. You kind of end up going through a lot of, like I said, man, a lot of the documentation, a lot of GitHub issues. It's a whole new world. So it's a tough one. I enjoy it. I do wonder if SaaS will make it. I know you mentioned maybe predictions for 2024. It's not a prediction for 2024, but I do wonder sometimes, like, if SaaS is going to make it long term, just because all it's doing is like pattern recognition, and like AI is pretty great at that, man. It's pretty wonderful at it. Especially as you turn those knobs and you augment with your own data. I do want to play with that OWASP BERT LLM. I haven't gotten to spend a lot of time with it. Have you gotten any time with it?
No. Like I said, I mean, I disconnected pretty hard after my Q4, fog lifted for a little bit. Now I'm having to come out of the fog now to figure out exactly where all the, where business and projects are at. So I haven't, right? Like that's definitely going to be Q1 for us, for my team over here, is figuring out, hey, what is it that we can do? How can we use each of these different LLMs? I haven't even played, like, what is the OWASP one that you're talking about?
It's called OWASP BERT.
BERT.
BERT. It's basically, it's an LLM trained with OWASP's data. So it's got all its cheat sheet data information and guides and all kinds of, basically everything OWASP puts out there. So it's trained on that, which is awesome, like, especially if you want to have an AppSec specific LLM to ask questions against. But I can't recommend it yet because I haven't played with it too much on my end, because there's without giving away too much, there's some, I'll tell you privately, but in terms of giving away what LLM I'm using, a lot of stuff, staying a little private with that. But in any case, the LLM I'm using is optimized heavily for code. You could probably figure that out. But it's very, very interesting space, but it's just very tough. But anyways, that was my holiday break, sadly. I pretty much just, it's funny, it wasn't much different from a normal, I was like, I worked out in the morning like I'm supposed to, did the work all day, apologized to my family up and down that, like, I was stuck in my office, but they understand small sacrifices, right? And then my jiu-jitsu coaches were out for a week, and so I just took over and ran all the open mats at night. And so if you don't follow jiu-jitsu or do any of that, it's just sparring for 2 hours. So that was basically it, just doing jiu-jitsu, working out, and working.
That's cool.
Oh, and I fought a bird on Christmas. I don't know what it is with me and birds, man.
You fought a bird.
I fought a bird on Christmas Day, man.
Things that Ken hates. Birds. Got it. On Christmas.
Ironically, I love birds. I actually love birds, but they don't love me, man. I don't know what it is. This thing got in the house, in the basement, where I have a sliding glass door. I left it open. Totally my fault. But then it wouldn't leave, and I needed to go to bed, and it's like pooping all over the house, flying everywhere. It came in through the sliding glass door in the basement, but then it like flew up into the first floor and then onto the second floor and into my bedroom. So my wife and I pretty much spent like the entire night trying to trap this thing. We ended up getting it, and I released it. No birds were harmed too much. I did try to shoot it with not anything serious, Nerf gun, to try and like get it out of some spots that I was trying to get it unstuck. Anyways, man, it was 6 hours, man. It was 6 hours of that. I thought I couldn't go to bed. So anyways, it was very harrowing. Not how you would expect to spend Christmas, but here we are, Seth. That's how it went down.
I just posted a meme in chat. That's what I'm expecting, is you fighting a bird on Christmas. That's amazing. Oh, that's great. Awesome. Let's see what else is going on. You and I have been paying attention to news, obviously. Like it sounds like you had a break at least like productive. One of the things that is nice when you're in that development mode is the distractions seem to disappear a little bit around the holidays, just from other people, right? Like everybody's kind of doing their own family thing, everybody's doing something else, and it is a good time to do research. I do miss the days when I didn't have as much to do over that time, and you could really dig into like the Sans Holiday Hackfest or whatever it is, right? Like, or some of the CTFs that go on between Christmas and New Year's. I mean, it's still on my bucket list at some point to go to the Chaos Computer Congress and in northern
Heck
Germany.
yeah, man.
But it's the same thing, right? Like, it's the week between Christmas and New Year's, and it's really hard to disconnect when you do have other things that are going on. So it'd be interesting, like, let us know in Slack what everybody else got up to over the holiday break, what what research or what articles you were following. We'll pop a couple of them up here just to talk about today, in the next half hour, for the rest of this episode. I was digging through specifically, Ken, hold on, which one was I looking at? I don't know. Where do you want to start? What piqued your interest while outside of LLMs while we were out?
Yeah, that was pretty much all. I couldn't think about anything else. But you had some pretty good articles. So like, yeah, I think the first one, going back to the list, the first one would be the Rust Foundation one. I thought was the most interesting from a technical perspective.
Yeah,
Kind
I'll
of a
pop it
breakdown.
in.
I didn't get a huge chance to really. I mean, I kind of skimmed it, but it seems
Okay.
like they're basically trying to. Yeah, I'll let you summarize that, and I'll. You want me to post the links? Oh, you got it. Okay.
I got
Well, I
it.
can post it in Slack if you want.
Okay. Yeah. And so basically what's going on here is that Rust is talking through they're building a proposal out for artifact signing. So recognizing, and you and I have had this discussion before, right? Like, we talk a lot about package managers and the security supply chain or supply chain security, how we are seeing attacks against the supply chain. It's watering hole attacks because everybody uses those, developers specifically, CI/CD pipelines when they pull those packages down. There's ways to execute code. We see these in bug bounty reports, over and over again, right? Like, organizations just struggle on how to secure this, right? So Rust is going a step further to actually secure the pipeline, right? By signing packages. Now, this doesn't mean that there's not going to be vulnerabilities that pop through, especially somebody that is targeting or trying to do namespace confusion, namespace attacks, or take over someone else's environment. One of the things that you can actually do, though, is you can start to pin your CI/CD pipeline and your packages to specific signatures, right? That's the idea. Is we've got a public key infrastructure that's out there. You can pin to, hey, this is signed by Rust, or you can pin to specific, hey, these developers actually signed it. So this would eliminate someone maliciously taking over an account, right, on the package repository, pushing out new packages that are signed with a new key that you don't recognize and you haven't accepted. Your CI/CD pipeline, your development machines would not actually accept those packages without the proper signature in place. This is also going to eliminate some of that internal package repository confusion, like dependency confusion that happens, because I could pin to, hey, I know that my organization is always using this specific key to sign. So even if there's a duplicate package that's out in a public repository, right, that is malicious, that's targeting, Apple. This was, Apple and those other large organizations that got exploited by dependency confusion. The CI/CD pipeline would not accept that package because it wasn't signed by the proper authority, right? So again, there's kind of multiple facets and multiple attacks that it is eliminating when you start to talk about the use of public-private keys and package signing and package checks. But it's still going to require some work by the DevOps people, by developers, to make sure that you are checking proper signatures, right? That's always the issue that we run into here is people turn this off for ease of porting, ease of usability, what have you. And if somebody figures that out, they can still get around it. But it is, again, another arrow in your quiver as far as like preventing dependency confusion attacks. I think you'll see this start to happen for other package repositories. I mean, Ken, you were more intimately involved with npm than you are with Rust or with the crates. Like, was this a discussion that you guys ever had over there when you were in the discussions, I guess?
Yeah, no, they had those discussions and I observed, but I don't remember. Sorry, my memory is really hazy on outcomes there and decisions made. I think this is interesting though that there's a few things. Like for one, 4 years ago they started on an RFC for this, which they linked to in this article, and didn't have the bandwidth for it. But it's pretty interesting. They're going that route. They said they are doing this because they have some government, like you said, corporate and government users of Rust. Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to understand, like, as I look at this though, so where, like, I don't know, I haven't looked into the actual specifications, so I'm not sure, like, if I understand yet, like, where keys are being stored, what that process looks like, how secure that is. I mean, I like broad strokes is awesome. It's great. Curious though, obviously, how it's going to be implemented, and then what the threat model on that looks like, and if there's still some potentials for like an ATO to still have some sort of impact on the validity of the keys, or so anyways, I should read this specification more before I can really comment on anything too technical.
Too in depth. Yeah.
No,
I mean, it's good. Yeah. I like the idea, right? Like, I mean, I don't think it's a revolutionary discussion, right? The release or whatever it is, they're talking about how they're going to be implementing and how they're moving through this process. It is, it's more of iterative approach to supply chain security, right? Like that's definitely where we've got to get to, because we've got to ensure that packages and scripts, and this becomes the other question that I have is, right, like you've got, okay, there's the binary itself, and we've always like kind of done checksums and other things with the package that's being delivered, like Rust. How much of the rest of that pacument though is actually signed, right? The pre and post install scripts, the metadata that's associated with that package, is it part of that signature? Is that also being checked? There's again, you go to the details, right, Ken? That's kind of what I'm getting at as well. If the details aren't secure, that's where we make mistakes and where the vulnerabilities start to pop up.
Well, actually, I misunderstood some portion of this, and so I'll back up here, because like that was what I was referring to, was what this last statement, or this sentence under the crate section says, which says, "You may have noticed that this doesn't address crate signing by authors. For more detail on that, see the future possibilities section." It's more just making sure that we've given a checksum, we've signed, given a checksum, and that checksum matches up with what you're expecting and pinning to in CI. So that all sounds very, very awesome, but also like we should be doing that everywhere, right? For every ecosystem.
Yeah. No,
and again, like we talked about it a few weeks ago, not to bring, because I'm not trying to bring it back to that, but we did talk about how this is going to impact now with AI stuff, how that's the similar, it happened with Docker's ecosystems, it's happened with libraries you include in your software, dependencies. Now it's going to be, models and all the tooling around that, similar thing, right? So Hugging Face just went through this, this being, an issue with stolen or modified LLMs with stolen tokens. It's going to happen everywhere. But anyways, I like to see that. I like to see that someone's taking a proactive approach on this. This is cool.
Yeah. Well,
Uh,
and I mean
that's
to that point too, they reference the the supply chain integrity efforts of OpenSSF, and this is I posted it there. It's over a year old, but the idea it's building on top of this S2C 2F, right, secure supply chain consumption framework, right. Um, and the different levels that are associated with that. So advanced threat defense, digitally signed, rebuilt, operate, OSS, open source software. um, some of this is are you're seeing the start of Rust specifically and crates actually implement what these specifications are going to be over time. And
nice.
again, it's iterative, right? It's iterative. Yeah. Um, cool. And yeah, like Hugging Face, like I think we're going to see more and more of this start to pop up. But and
That's your
that being
2024 prediction, more protections on supply
more
chain stuff.
protections, I think more protections, but also more attacks, right? Like the watering hole. Um, yeah, the watering hole attacks or the surface that are actually exposed by the different package managers is it's just too tempting, right?
Hmm.
um, it's the same reason that we target updates or people target updates. They target other things. Is there's just so much software and there's so much kind of collateral damage that happens if you can exploit um, a popular package, right? If I can take over a popular package that has 100, 200, 300 million, whatever, right? Like downloads a month, then that's the possibility that I can exploit that many different systems. It's an amplification effect. Right? Same reason that we see malware that targets, still targets, Windows is because it's the most popular operating system that's out there. So if I'm going to put effort into it, what am I going to target? So yeah, from a prediction perspective, yes, like I don't think there's not going to be a lot of people that target Rust specifically, but NPM by and far will be the most targeted package manager out there. Just always will be, given the number of people that use it, the number of packages, and the dependencies that exist. I don't know. Okay, so that's one of my predictions, I guess, is we'll see an increase in supply chain security, but we'll also see an increase in attacks. What about you? What is one of your predictions for 2024?
You know, oh, I don't know if I have anything novel. I mean, I'm watching. It's funny because last year this time it would have been like, oh, Web3 is like the big thing this year, and so now AI is the big thing, right? And so you're seeing a
Mm-hmm.
lot of like the prompt injection stuff, and I've seen like actually during the break I saw a lot of different attacks and articles about compromises and all that. So of course I want to say that that's something we're going to see a heavily, both research and then companies coming out, because like to prevent malicious activity, to secure those products. And I say that knowing that last year at the Innovation Sandbox, I think it was at RSA, Hidden Layer it was the first company I'd seen who was there to protect uh, your data and make sure that I don't know if it's just your data. I can't remember honestly. I know it's some part of it's making sure the data is like not tampered with and all that stuff, so you don't get back garbage stuff. But I don't remember if there were. I'm sure there were other things it was doing. I can't remember in detail. And also they only give you like I don't know a couple minutes to pitch your thing, which makes sense. But that's how long they give you, so you don't get like obviously huge amounts of detail. What I would like to see, I don't have a prediction, but what I would like to see is more on that same note, companies like Pangea, who was also at the Innovation Sandbox, come out of the woodwork. Because I think one thing I really liked about Pangea's model was they had the AAA as a service, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
Auditing, authentication, and authorization as a service, stuff that's hard for people to traditionally get done um, well, and especially if you're like a smaller company. So I think that that's something that's pretty interesting. Uh, I guess, for me, I'm curious, like what frameworks become kind of more popular this year. I know last year Next.js was the one that people started
Yeah.
to really lean into. And by the way, on the note of hidden layer and Pangea, for those that don't know or just joining, Seth and I don't have any relationship with those companies. We don't take any sponsorship or anything like that from them. I just, I saw their names and what they did. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know if Next.js will be the thing, or because Laravel actually had some, or I don't know if I'm saying that right, Laravel, that had like a lot of uptick, it seemed like. But yeah, I don't know what 2024 will bring in that
Yeah.
regard.
Well, I mean, I've actually seen, like, I'm with you on the, as far as frameworks go, like it's really hard to predict where things are going to spin. Next.js, I honestly, I've seen a lot more of that the last half of 2023. And even in the beginning of 2023 is when it started to pop up for us, as far as a UI framework. Um, if you've never played with it, here we'll have to post a link about it. Next.js is really interesting because it almost is pushing back to this this monolith idea that you develop in one framework and have it's both UI and server in the same development framework, and then depending on how you deploy, it goes to it's either the server side or the UI side. So it's React on the front end, it's NPM on the back end, and it has all of these hooks, and it makes it easy for developers. I don't know if I told you this, like we had like one client that accidentally specified a private key. It was a Web3 company, like specified one of their private keys that was used to actually push things and interact with smart contracts on chain, right? They accidentally pushed that into the public portion of Next.js, and it got deployed as a part of the UI as instead of just to the server itself, right? There's gotchas that come with using those sorts of frameworks that would have never happened had they had a strict separation between, hey, this is React and this is like NPM behind the scenes, right? Like, or whatever it is, right? Or Node, right? Node.js, and but like, so we're going to have those problems that exist, right? Because we are trying to, hey, we're simplifying things for developers, but it's also fuzzing those lines between what is it that I'm doing that's actually UI specific, what is it that I'm doing that's actually server specific. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
that's because I know it's very opinionated, and like you put stuff in specific places and then it just kind of does all the magic abstraction for you. It makes everything pretty nice and pretty neat. But .NET Blazor is also going down the road of mixing UI and server. Ooh, interesting. I
yeah,
have not seen .NET, or you've seen this maybe, Seth?
actually, this isn't the first time that it's come up in the last couple of months, right? Like .NET Blazor is also, it again, I think they've seen like Next.js, like the popularity there. They're trying to make it easier on developers. Scott, thanks for that call out, right? Like .NET Blazor, it's the same thing. It's just targeting a different, it's targeting .NET in this case and IIS behind the scenes, building out the same sort of UI server split just based on how the deployment model exists. So your security controls are really like, it used to be air gapped, right? We start talking about these frameworks and it used to be air gapped between, oh, here's the repository for my server side API. Here's the repository for my UI. And the two don't meet, right? Until you actually do a deployment, right? But with these frameworks, what we're doing is we're pushing security. Now that they're intertwined, we are depending more on DevOps and DevSecOps specifically, and those frameworks to separate out these components in in a production environment and a staging environment, what have you. And it's going to be easier from a configuration perspective to make the sort of mistakes like I was referencing, where hey, I accidentally assigned this to the wrong variable, to the wrong environment, to the wrong file, and it gets deployed in production and I don't actually see it. It's no longer a coding mistake per se. It's now a configuration issue. And this goes back to our code review like methodology, right, Ken? Right, like knowing what the framework is and where those gotchas are. is critical to actually securing those applications. Because that's where we see quite a bit of that actually happening, especially in a SaaS environment, like with AWS and other things. Like it's very easy to actually make those mistakes.
Yeah, man. That's I'm actually kind of that's why with the thing I'm building, that's part of it is we've talked about this, being able to like point at like Blazor's docs or Next.js, and then just import all that stuff into a vector format, and then just like ask questions against that vector format, and say like, is this within line with what the expectations should be for this thing? Pretty wild world, pretty neat stuff. But anyways, yeah.
Yeah.
Documentation, making sure what's going out the door aligns with that documentation, and then sort of finding the corner edge cases, nuances. Since we always talk about framework nuances, a good way to speed that
Well,
up.
I mean, honestly, like so I've been using VTM, right? Like the walkthroughs that we always do in the course with VTM. I've been using that as my test bed against some of those, right? Like building out a chat a chat bot, uploading a zip file, configuring the chat bot to be like, hey, you are an expert in Python security, Django security. Like, let me know, like, what are the specific issues and how to actually spin through that. And from an information gathering perspective, right, like what it is that takes us a while, right? Like, it's going to be interesting as we rebuild the course, or as we're starting to introduce some of these new ideas into it, how quickly it actually goes, because it does speed up that process.
Yeah.
I no longer have to go dig through Django documentation. I just go to that chatbot. And even if I'm not, then this is how we've been using it, right? Like, because we haven't integrated completely. Hey, I'm going to give like code to, OpenAI, but I can go configure a chatbot and tell OpenAI, hey, you're an expert, like learn how to actually, build out those prompts, right? To ask OpenAI what it knows about Django specifically, right? Like, hey, give me the rundown on, and this is for VTM, right? Like, because that's been my test bed, but give me the rundown on what security looks like, right? Like, you've already consumed all the Django security documentation. What are the gotchas? What is it that I should be looking for when it comes to SQL injection, right? And it'll spit that back way quicker than me actually digging through Django documentation. Especially if I already have told it, this is the framework version. These are the libraries that are loaded. It's so much
Yeah,
quicker.
there's the context tag that you usually provide. Yeah, you put all that stuff in that context tag. You get some deep. That's the crazy part, man. Is like in the past you need like a team of researchers to do all this stuff.
Yeah.
Compile this information, find these gotchas, blah blah blah. I mean, not that you don't still obviously need that to some degree, obviously, but man, it's pretty powerful. And actually, this is another thing too. Since we're on the topic of this, and then 2024 predictions, I don't know if everybody else has experienced this, but I've been using Copilot for quite a while now,
Mhm.
and I get a sense of fatigue sometimes with it. And I don't know if this is going to be something where if it fatigues other developers.
What do you mean by
Yeah,
fatigue?
yeah. So sometimes, well, for one, like it'll pop up my IDE covering and completely obfuscating the code that I'm working on, or it'll immediately start expanding it out, and it actually kind of like starts to mess with my brain, because I'm like, wait, that's not what I want to write, and like now I'm like looking at the stuff you're doing, and sometimes it's okay, and sometimes it's great, sometimes it's very accurate and wonderful. Sometimes it's kind of like, whoa, no, and then sometimes it's just completely wrong.
Mhm.
But I think that's all getting the downsides are not like, I'm not really even talking about its accuracy and what it's producing, because that's getting better and better, I feel like, with time. It's actually just the way that it works in inside the IDE, where it's like interrupting my, I guess it's interrupting my flow. And maybe I it's probably my own fault, because like I get off track very easily, never been diagnosed formally with anything, but it's very easy to get distracted by shiny things, and that's a shiny thing all the time.
Yep.
So anyways, I question if you'll see anybody else talking about maybe some fatigue with the product. And yeah,
Well, I mean,
I don't know.
I think with predictive text in general, right? Like it's very easy to go down those rabbit holes, or side quests, right? Like, however you want to
Yeah.
call it, right? Um, because I've had it do that multiple times as well. I don't know if I'm necessarily fatigued with it, but it's also not because I'm also not developing on a daily basis, like producing huge amounts of code. Like for me, it's definitely hey, it's still a novel thing when I'm in there, and it's able to
Yeah.
speed up my process. Um, and I'm able to ignore it because I'm usually like I'm very scoped as far as like, oh, I've got to go accomplish this thing because I've got to get back to client work or whatever it is. I'm not necessarily a developer, but I can see it going that route pretty easily. Because I mean, it's a large language model. It's predicting, right? Like, oh, what is the token, or what are the tokens that are the highest probability of what you intended based on what I know, right? That's a very, very simplistic explanation of a large language model. Um, but it works, right? Like, so if you have something that hits a 99.8% versus 99.5%, it's going to show the 99.8%, even though maybe the token that was at 97% is what you intended as a developer. And so it's almost getting in your way. Yes, it's speeding things up, but it can get in your way as well. Especially when it's producing large blocks of text, like you're saying, right? Like when those functions are way out of whack, um, escape or whatever else becomes a very handy thing, but it can take away from your development time and spin you into places that you probably don't want to go.
I mean, I would say I'm keeping it, right. Like I'm not at all. I mean, I still like it and still use it, but I just know at times I'm like, maybe today I pause it, because sometimes it does become a bit much. But overall, I'd say, yeah, good addition, and I like it. And I think GitHub just released a chat thing for it too, GitHub Copilot Chat, which I think you can chat from your ID. I don't know. I skim a lot. So that's cool.
Well,
That's neat. That's an additional
that
thing.
was it, right? Uh, they just released Microsoft Copilot, right? Did you see that?
Yes, I
Microsoft,
did
your
actually.
everyday AI. I found it interesting that they were using the term Copilot again, right?
Yeah.
For basically an AI app that is for iOS and Android, right? Unless I'm wrong. Um, that was anyway. I don't know
You
if
sound
that's
like
what
you
you
know
were
more
going
than I
into.
do, so I don't know. I can't tell you you're wrong if you're wrong.
Mm-hmm.
But thankfully, we have the
Yeah.
internet, so that's good.
I have
Always
to
Google
log
it.
in to look it up, right? Like that's what I was just doing, was Googling it, introducing your Copilot for work, right? Okay, let me drop the official. And this wasn't one that I intended to talk about today, but now that we're on that path, let me drop it in there.
Yeah, it's kind of
Yeah.
hard not to. I mean, this is kind of dominating the world right now. I mean, from a security perspective, honestly from like every angle, really. But okay, I see what you're saying. Yeah, age of copilots.
I mean, they've
Which
basically, yeah, the blogs, that blog. I guess that was a long time ago that Microsoft 365 Copilot came out. Never mind. So what was
Oh
the new
man, did you
one?
see the hullabaloo about Dropbox? So Dropbox had overnight added like I don't know, some kind of widget advanced thingy, but it said it's backed by AI. And people were not happy because all of a sudden all the stuff you're storing on Dropbox is going off to, and they were like, and it wasn't because they went to an LLM, it's because they specifically went to OpenAI. I have an article about this actually. I was reading about it. I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, yikes. I think I got that from a Hacker Newsletter, that article. So credit where credit's due. But if I can find it, yeah, the AI trust crisis. There we
AI
go.
trust crisis. I, I mean, honestly, it's because we're in the AI hype cycle. Just the number of times that I had family like people that aren't in the tech space actually bring up chat GPT over the holidays. Like that's always fascinating to me, is you get to family parties and other things, and how much of what we do on a daily basis actually bleeds into those conversations, right? And how much they should actually use it, because I've got a lot of family members that are in academia, and that is their big discussion point with chat GPT, is how much people are using it to write papers for them, or what's appropriate to actually be using. And yeah, it's a hard question to answer when it can be such a good thing, right? Like we don't want to turn people off. AI trust crisis, huh?
Yeah, I mean, it's actually interesting because they go and it's not just that. They talk about like Facebook's they liken it becomes almost a psychological breakdown of how humans trust in general. But they mentioned like and actually I just went through this over the Christmas break. We mentioned some word and then all of a sudden got a bunch of ads for it, and it goes back to that, is Facebook spying on you through your phone thing. The article talks about the reasons why that isn't true. It's been disproven, some podcasts, and the ramifications, even if it were true, the ramifications for Facebook, who's been like, or I guess Meta, adamant they don't do that and all that stuff. Yeah, it'd be huge, not worth it. And eventually somebody would whistleblow. It's too big of a company. So, which are all good points, but the fact remains that doesn't mean anything, right? We can do all that rationale and all that, present facts, but at the end of the day, people are going to feel how they feel. And if they have no rational explanation, or, I don't know, that's how they're going to feel. Like,
this is the sentence that I just dropped up there, sticks out to me, because this is definitely the sentiment that I get from people outside of the tech space. Is key issue here is the same as the open AI training issue. People don't believe these companies when they say they aren't doing something.
Yeah. Trust
right?
has been lost.
Yeah. And I mean, rightfully so, right? Like people have been burned so many times by, hey, I'm protecting your data. Oh, wait, here's a letter about how you were breached and my data just, it's now on the, the dark web, right? Like, and it's happened over and over and over again. And it doesn't matter the regulations that have been put into place. It doesn't matter what else, like what they've been saying from a marketing speak perspective, because like we've taught people not to trust based on the interactions of the past. I don't know how to get around that, but that's definitely the case.
Ironic that we would be the ones trying to get people to trust anything, or promoting that in any case. But yeah, I think the article talks about just sort of like at the end of the day, large LLMs are more performant, and so privacy is you're weighing the efficiency and how well it performs with the privacy aspects. But the truth is, I don't think that's going to be much of a thing for much longer, because these models are getting smaller and smaller and performing at a higher and higher level. The cost to run them is getting cheaper and cheaper.
Yeah.
And it's kind of one of those things where it's just, so
and
I don't think it's going to be maybe even a thing to think about in the very near future. Probably just like, well, run your own, it's fine.
Yeah. Well, and that's what it's going to come down to. And this is where I like when the initial hype cycle started, where like I felt like things were going to go. So I guess this is another one of my predictions, right? Is models are going to splinter, right? And you're already seeing this if you look at Hugging Face or whatever else it is. And organizations are going to be promoted or demoted, right? Like based on how well they are able to train their AI. So like us as a consulting organization, or you as dry run security, like being on top of that and being able to train your own local AI to do very specific tasks will be advantageous to you as an organization or to us as an organization. And that is what going to be a key business driver for us in the future.
Hmm.
I don't know if that's going to be 2024, but it is coming, right? Like we're going to have our own models. They're going to be disparate. They're going to be trained to the specific use cases or to the company use cases that we have. And that is we're going to have to live and die by that training that we perform and how we actually use those models. Organizations that don't have that sort of a outlook or don't actually train or are using generic models will probably suffer in the future.
I agree. Yeah, it probably will. And if you don't, or if you just don't, I mean, I think it would. I forget. Oh man, I forget the DevOps conference where this was said, but it was essentially it was like to those companies that are like, we have a no AI policy, like shouldn't work there, is what they said to the audience, like because they're just don't work there. Like it's they're kind of killing themselves. I mean, everybody's gonna find a use to, which is nice. It'll be interesting to see what we're able to focus on, and where we put our efforts as human beings when some of the more common, current modern day rigmarole just goes away.
Yep.
So that'll be nice. That'll be nice to be freed up a little bit to focus on some of the harder problems.
Yeah.
So, I guess it just kind of, goes full circle into sort of maybe just more of the product security side of things versus AppSec janitor like I've been most of my career. Cool. Well, so I don't, no like amazing predictions. Just hope and then here's an aside from outside of AppSec. Can the world just be okay in 2024? Can we just calm the fuck down for a moment and just like relax? Just I don't know. It'd be nice to like
be good to each other.
Like a normal, just a normal year, just average. Just
we're gonna go back
nothing
to
notable.
Seth and Ken's excellent adventures. Just be excellent to each other, right? Like
just be excellent to each other, dudes.
To each other. Yeah,
and dudettes, just peoples in generals.
Man. That would be great. That would be great. Cool. All right. Well, I think that's it. You and I have been talking for an hour. Obviously, we could go longer, but we'll be back next week. In the meantime, jump into Slack. There's probably going to be quite a few articles and other things posted, and the conversation will continue there, as it always does. And otherwise, I think that's everything for today, Ken. Yeah.
Actually, let's throw out one other thing too.
Okay.
Because we do have some people that are newer to AppSec joining us now. Not, this isn't the first time that's come up recently. Let us know if there's anything that we could. I mean, we're always, because there's this channel's growing. We have more subscribers and people that aren't as familiar with us and as familiar with the last 6 years of work and before that we've done. We're always willing to show you things too, open up our keyboard and share our screen and start showing things too. So, this is a good time to tell us what you'd like to see, what topics you'd like us to cover, what tools you might want us to demo, anything like that. Obviously, after 6 years, it's never bad to get ideas from the audience as to what we could be doing. And like I said, it's a great time to tell us. So you can email us at info@absoluteappsec.com. You can go on our Slack channel, join us there. You can DM us there. You can throw it into the general random channel, wherever you want, however you want to give us that feedback. And as always, if there are any guests that you'd like to see, send that our way as well.
Yep.
All right.
Cool. All right. Well, good deal. Thanks everybody for joining today. We'll catch you all online, and otherwise, have a great new year. Happy New Year as it is. And, good luck in your endeavors over the course of this year.